So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. We all know how precious time is, and we want to make sure that your time today is well spent. Talking about time, we ran a webinar actually on preparing a line for 9001 2015 3 years ago now. And it's amazing how quickly the time has gone. It feels like yesterday, and I'm sure it does for you guys too. So time's flying by. We've got the transition for September 2018. Quite unbelievable. So I'm sure quite a fair amount of you will have already transitioned to the standard that are on. Some maybe at the beginning, middle or end, regardless of where you are as a business. This webinar today should and hopefully will provide you with some interesting intel. And again, even if you have attained, this will be something for you to look at on the retaining year on year. So we have a short time to talk today, so let's get started. The agenda, we'll be covering who we are, the introductions, journey so far, then I will be introducing you to the famous Martin Dolan, transitioning to 9001 2015, and then at the end we will be covering the Q&A. So who are we? Now, we have hundreds of companies on the webinar today, some of which have never heard of us, some of whom are existing customers. So if you're an existing customer, this is a current snapshot of where we are. And if you're new to us, this gives you a bit of insight into IdeaGen as a business. I'm just going to run through the points here. Suppliers of quality, safety, audit, performance and risk management solutions. We have actually been around, so we were formerly Gale Quality, and we were acquired by IdeaGen a few years ago. So this, we have actually been around for about 25 years. We were acquired, and we have also integrated 12 other companies in 9 years, which I'm sure you'll agree is a lot in that time period. Global presence in the UK, we have a few sites now in the United Kingdom, a site out in Dubai, United States and Southeast Asia. Staff headcount, around about 400, and that's more planned for this year. And we are seen as thought leaders, certainly around the aviation, A&D, manufacturing, healthcare and life science. The good thing to note that we do have our standard 9001 2015. We also have 14001 for environmental, 27001 accredited. And we will be, as a business, moving to 45001, which hopefully I'll be supporting. You can see we expect to report our 9th year of growth in 2018 following our interims, and you can see the results that we have here. It's pretty phenomenal, and we're a fast-growing company. That's just to give you some idea on us, and also a 24/7 operation, because we have customers in every country in the world, which we're proud to say. So we do offer that level of support for them. Now, introductions here. I'm going to hand over to Martin in a second. I'll just tell you who I am, my background. I'm Jane Murdoch, been with IdeaGen 3 years next week. And my background is safety, risk and latterly quality over the last 15 years. I'm also the Vice Chair for the Scottish Chamber of Safety, and we help support the HSE on delivering their strategy for helping GB work well throughout the UK. So, Martin?
Hi there, thanks Jane. So my name's Martin Dolan. As you can see, currently the Global Head of Supplier Quality and Development for a fairly well-known temporary power and temperature control company. Currently have around 15,000 suppliers, and obviously have to ensure that all of these are transitioned as well as part of this project. So I think without further ado, what we should do is start to have a look at the actual standard. I thought for today's presentation it would have been a good idea for us to actually have a look at my background in this, the journey that I have been on, and also really some of the pitfalls and some of the experiences that I've seen through this. Okay, So the content of today's presentation is the transition plan, the key changes. I'll do a quick cross-reference between 9001 and 2008 and 9001 2015. We'll look at section 4, one of the main changes in the new standard, one of the more complex areas I would imagine for some businesses that haven't transitioned. And then we'll go to section 5, and that's another key area, leadership, where leadership can't devolve themselves from certain parts of the new standard. We'll have a look at section 6, planning, section 7, support, and we'll move through the standard basically till we get to the point where we're at section 10. By that point, hopefully we can see where the thread of what we're doing between section 4 and 5 actually has an impact on your business as a whole. So I would imagine quite a lot of people nervous about this. The deadline's approaching, it's coming in September. I had the opportunity to do this actually on the days when the standard was released. I had naturally progressed towards a risk-based approach, and basically allowed me to go very, very early. So it's been some 2 years since I've done it. However, it hasn't changed since then, and what I'm going to do today is take a real practical and down-to-earth approach on this. Okay, so through the contents, if we look at the transition plan, I would always advise that you take 12 months over a project like this and you split it into 4 chunks. Okay, so the chunks that I like to do is the planning phase, the development phase, the implementation phase, and the registration phase. At the planning stages, you normally take a few months over this. You can start the other phases at the same time, but really, you're pulling a team together. You're starting to understand the costs, the actual project itself. You're starting to look at the gaps that you can see in some of the obstacles coming towards you, and starting to educate yourself as well with what's coming. The development phase is really then looking at what you have today and where you have to get to. There's quite a lot of commonality there between the old standard and the new standard. However, there are changes, and you have to try and redevelop the process to be able to align to the new structure, which is Annex SL. And we'll cover more on Annex SL as we go through this. The implementation phase is really where the real work starts to begin, where you're looking at drafting the new quality management documentation, getting your manual together if you're taking that approach, approving your procedures, instructions, training your auditors. All auditors would have to be transitioned, I would imagine, to ensure that they're in a position to be able to accurately audit against the new standard, and creating your audit plan and closing out the actions once that's complete. You would expect to have your audits completely closed out by the time you get to your registration phase. You will note from that the registration phase happens very early. We should all already be in dialogue with our registration bodies, ensuring that we've planned out this year so that we don't miss it, because ultimately the deadline is September, and I see no means to an extension on that due to the time period we've already had. We've all had a full certification cycle. Okay. So key changes, as I say, this is really about my experience with this. Basically keeping it as practical as possible. Okay. So if we look at context of the organisation, companies are now asked to consider a combination of internal and external factors and conditions that can have an effect on your business. I'm going to cover more on that. That's probably one of the detailed areas that I think we should cover today. Issues, a change of terminology, but issues aligns to context of the organisation. It can be internal or external. It can be positive or negative. That's a change, and it can include conditions that either affect or are affected by the organisation. Interested parties. Previously, the standard was aligned to basically customers. It was very customer centric. Most things pointed back to that. We've now replaced that with interested parties. So this can be a person or an organisation that can affect or be affected by or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or activity made by your organisation. Examples include suppliers, customers, and competitors. I'll actually embellish on that a bit more because we can expand out on some of the areas of this presentation for today. The leadership requirements specific to top management, who are defined as a person. Just to be clear, really I see this as a key change in the standard. This is the game changer in my opinion. If the leadership comply with the standard, then they will be fully engaged with the business management system. Some of the areas that you're doing at context and section 5 really change businesses. It certainly has in the businesses that I've transitioned, if it's done properly. Risk. So we look at the history of risk. We've had preventative action, It changed to preventive in the 2008 standard. We've now removed that. That's now defined as risk. It's been detached from non-conformity, and it's moved into section 6 of the standard. So we're in a good position there. I think it takes away a bit of confusion between identifying risk and taking long-term corrective action. So I'm comfortable with that. We'll cover more on that later in the presentation. Communication, much more explicit in the new standard, and again we'll cover that, but ultimately it's asking you to determine and schedule who and what you're communicating, both internally and externally, and linking that to your interested parties, of course. Documented information replaces control of documents and records, which mostly were proceduralised together, but were two separate clauses. That's now together. For me, there wasn't any major changes there, but as I've been out and around this standard and auditing companies, sometimes the perception is that we don't need procedures. And if you read the standard, it's fairly more detailed than that, that it should be proportioned to the size of your business and the needs of your business. So we can cover a bit more on that as well. Performance evaluation, I didn't see major changes, but the measurement of quality performance and effectiveness of the quality management system, covering the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluation is applicable to ensure the valid results. Non-conformity and corrective action, as we said, there's some change. We've detached preventive action, we've linked corrective action to non-conformity. So there's a more detailed evaluation of both non-conformities themselves and the resulting corrective actions. And again, we'll cover some on that and some of the obstacles that I've faced in all the areas that we're discussing. Management review, for me personally, I feel what's happening in the context of the organisation, that's done well, that it could have an impact on the frequency and the cycle of your management review. I'll share some of my experiences on that, and really it is down to every individual company how they approach that. Okay, quite a lot of detail on this page. Really, what I'm doing is I'm aligning 2015 to 2008. If we take the highlights out of that, if you look at the section 4 on the left-hand side, 4.1 through to 4.4, there was already a section 4 in the standard, as we all know, but that became context of the organisation when we moved over to the new standard. Section 6.1 is the other one of note, where we moved preventive action. We called it risk. It's a different thing altogether today, and that's now a feature of section 6. Other highlights for me, where I felt some impact, was in section 8.3.1, where really that wasn't there in general terms, but it was referred to in clause 7.3 before. If we move on to the next slide. Okay, so as we know, section 8 was the end of the old standard. We now have section 9 and 10, okay, to make space for the new sections. So what we're really looking at here is section 4 to 10 in the new international standard. This crosses over from 9,000 into 14 and eventually 45,000. So we've got a common structure called Annex SL, and they'll all be section 4 to section 10. And the commonality is there now, where documented information can be used commonly as long as you're pulling out the key requirements of each of these standards. And there's other areas of commonality that, again, I think we will cross during this presentation. Okay, so context of the organisation. When I did this, it was around 3 months before the new standard came out. Taking my business through it was very daunting. It actually became quite an easy process. So I would like to take you through my experience with how I went about this. There was limited information. My certification body at the time was unsure how this would look, although they knew what they would expect to see. So taking this and creating a process approach, that's what the standard's asking us to do, to have a process approach to doing this. So firstly, what it's asking you to do at 4.1 is certainly understand the organisation, its content, and moving on from there, determining where potential, I'm going to use the word potential, the standard refers to external and internal issues. If you look at the actual graphics on the screen, this is what I actually created for my quality manual. I've put the word potential in. I felt more comfortable with that. And if we start with internal issues, and then maybe if everyone reflects in your own business, because I feel that although below this top level graphic there's differences business to business, actually it fits most companies. If you consider your financial performance as an internal potential issue, that affects everybody. We all set KPIs, objectives, however you want to refer that, and we all monitor, we all measure. The standard's asking us now to take that approach with internal issues. If you look at safety performance, absolutely. We have objectives there. When we see trends, we see things changing, we react to them. The standards, in my opinion, asking us to do that now. Quality performance. We all set objectives. We all sit down, some once a week, some once a month, but we're already looking at quality. It's about having a structured approach to what are we trying to achieve and what actions we should do. And this is the point of identifying them so early, actually, in your management system. Now, I'm not going to read through the everything on the chart, but certainly if you reflect in the branches there, this is for an integrated system, so you have 14,001 elements and 18,001 elements on that as well. If we move over onto the top right, where potential external issues, these are things that we can't actually we can't change. We have to mitigate the risk, and that's the point of breaking them out. If you look at internal issues, you're in complete control. Supplier performance, delivery performance, inventory control, productivity. We control that. We control that as a business. Any business is in complete control. When you move over and look to external issues, market demand, we can't really control that. Economic situations, again, all of these we can't control. Technological changes with your competition, it doesn't matter if you're in service or you're making a product, really that applies to most people. Political issues, I'll come back to that one. Investment, corporate compliance, changes in law. That affects everybody, it affects especially changes in law, so we have to really see that coming, and it has to be a feature of our routine monitoring of how we're performing, if there's any risk coming there, and that's really what I took from this area of the standard. So for external issues, for instance, political issues, I actually lost the Russian market overnight due to political issues. If it had been 2 years earlier and I had been using the new international standard and it had been done properly from a context perspective, my risk tools would have identified that there was something coming. I would have been able to mitigate, and that's a key thing for external issues. You're looking to monitor the key things that could affect your business, affect your interested parties, and go and mitigate those as risks. For the internal issues, and I feel personally, yes, risk tools should be applied, absolutely. That's what the standard's now calling for, certainly in the guidance notes. However, basically the internal issues we can control. There's no doubt about that, but the external ones we have to manage differently. I apply SWOT analysis. You'll notice that there's MR, a reference on each of the branches for internal and external. This is where I felt there was an impact in the management review, where I had to refer from this context on the page into the actual review cycle. I found that we were having a quality meeting every month. We were having a financial performance meeting. What I did personally is I changed how we reported those, and I applied those risk tools, the SWOT analysis to those, and I started to manage the actions better. I actually, obviously I'm sitting here with ideas, and I did actually use Q-Pulse to manage those actions because it was very visible, and it was communicating target timescales, and it was defining responsibility, which again is great from a compliance perspective. Okay, if you look at each of the branches and then start to align it to your interested parties, and again, this is, as we move through the standard throughout section 4, it's asking you to have a look at the impacts that these potential internal and external issues could have on your interested parties. So it used to be customer centric, as I said. Now we're looking at employees, we're looking at customers, we're looking at suppliers, subcontractors, service providers. We may group them and call them the same thing in some companies. Parent companies. Our parent companies have demands and can be impacted by these potential issues. Our neighbours, our social neighbours, our industrial neighbours are all impacted, certainly when you look at things from an environmental perspective. Legislative bodies can be massively impacted by our companies. Accreditation bodies, of course, we all have our favourites. They're a necessary evil, of course, but again, they are an interested party and can affect the context of your business. And channel partners. Channel partners, a lot of businesses actually sell to their own company and then distribute, which happens quite a lot, I would imagine, in automotive and things like that. So what will the certification body expect to see? So it's a new requirement in which the organisation is required to demonstrate that we understand the influences that are on it with regard to both internal and external issues. this can affect the strategic direction of your business and where you sit in the marketplace, and that's why it's prudent already to do that. I was in a comfortable position where naturally my management system was maturing and developing, and we were already in quite a strong position to go quick, and that's why we got it on the day the standard was released. So the certification body will expect to see this requirement to be addressed in some way by some process approach proportional to the assessment scope and the size and the complexity of your organisation. I would suggest what I've marked there won't be much different business to business. This is the approach I took. It refers out to other processes as well. There's a lot more detail in my management system, but sit down and visualise it with your leadership team. The leadership team need to be involved and understand, have you already got objectives? Have you already got KPIs? Certification body's going to ask that you have a process approach and that you should have an output. And the output for me was this map and then the fundamental objectives that it created. Other areas and pitfalls that you could cross is we're wanting to apply the risk tools that I mentioned. Now, you can use any ones you want. I find internal potential issues are best managed by SWOT analysis and external by PESTEL analysis, where you're looking at the political, the economical situation, the sociological, technological. So if you imagine how those branches look, that risk tool is actually directly aligned to what I would imagine would appear on there. So really that's an overview of what section 4 looks like. Interested parties are in there as well. I've already covered most of that, so you need to understand though what your needs and expectations. So if you create the context and you're creating objectives, you have to consider what your interested parties are, the requirements are. I think a very good one, if you look at the branches there, is culture as an internal issue potential. And then I would link culture to employees, if I'm being quite honest. And we all do employee surveys, and we all set ourselves tasks and actions to go and close those out, and we set objectives against that as a leadership team. I find that addresses the requirements of the standard in that area. So that's maybe some food for thought for people that are wondering, well, how would we measure ourselves in culture? Well, that's a perfect example. And what that allows you to do is understand the needs of your interested party, being employees. So using that as an example, again, there's many examples around those branches, but what you do at section 4.1 is really going to set the scene for your business performance, but also we're looking at compliance today. So for compliance to this standard, it doesn't have to be marked and associated the way I've done it, but you need to understand, have a handle and be able to demonstrate as a leadership team or as a management team that you understand the needs of your interested parties and they are completely aligned to these potential internal and external issues. Okay, the pitfalls. So the issues identified do not fully represent the organisation. A lot of people can copy and paste and we use ideas, and that's what quality assurance in particular is about. We use good ideas, but you've got to make sure it fits your business. It's got to be sized and proportion to your business. Another pitfall for me is that we shoot too high. This should be simple. It shouldn't be something that we go too complex because there's a higher risk of failure. Appropriate documented information has not been maintained. As asking for a process approach with an output. The output for me has been the objectives, the actions, the monitoring, the tasks that you align to that. Risks identified when monitoring these issues are not being mitigated. You're not closing your actions. That's why it's important. It's quite simple. I wouldn't put in a very heavy administrative process here, in my opinion. I have tried it. Sometimes you fail. The other one for me is not using risk tools, not being able to demonstrate that you've applied a risk-based approach to this. And we all talk about the new standard that's heavily weighted towards risk. Well, section 4, which we've just spoke about, sets the scene for that risk management. And if you get that right, I would imagine that the rest of your business management system will follow suit. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll be happy to move on. Okay.
I'm just sitting listening to you, Martin. I'm taking it all in.
Okay. Section 5. Okay. So leadership and commitment. We had mentioned that leadership and commitment. Section 5 was fairly new. A lot of what's in there was already there in different areas of the standard. However, what we've done is we've grouped it, we've put it into section 5. Okay. The reason that I've put this graphic on the screen, and really it pulls out the clause 5.1.1, and this is a clear message that I actually encountered, and this is an area of obstacle that I've encountered in various businesses. The 10 items on your screen there's many of them that now your certification body is going to expect the leadership team not to be devolved from. So if we read through some of these, top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to quality management system by, right, A, taking accountability for the effectiveness of the quality management system. My certification body, and I can assure you yours, is not looking for the quality manager to be completely switched on with this. They're looking for the leadership team to take the accountability. Okay, that they're going to want to interview the leadership team, the key members, at the opening meeting, probably in the hours after that. And they're going to want to sit down and have them demonstrate that they are taking accountability, ensuring the quality policy and the objectives are established. Consider Section 4 actually as an additional platform that provides a framework for objectives. It should go hand in hand with your policy. It's now the leadership team's responsibility. It always was, but it's now heavily weighted that way in the standard. Something else that comes up at this point before we go into Section C, this is that the requirement for a management representative is now gone. Actually, Section 5, leadership, replaces that. Your leadership team has to demonstrate that they actually do represent the business from a management system perspective. For C, ensuring the integration of the quality management system into the organisation's business processes. Absolutely, the leadership team can't devolve themselves for that. They have to take a proactive approach to ensuring that people are working to the business systems that they should have invested in and implemented. Promoting the use of a process approach, of course, and being engaged with that, using the process approach themselves. Okay, through the management review cycle, through your monthly meetings, through your weekly meetings, things like that. They should demonstrate this now. And the certification body is going to look for evidence of that. It's normally a verbal interview that they go through, but they want to see a demonstration that the leadership team are completely engaged with the business. Ensuring the resources needed for the quality management system are available doesn't always mean headcount. It's about the leadership team and the management team flexing resource sometimes, ensuring that you're targeted based on the risks you're identifying from Section 4, that you have the resource in the appropriate areas of your business. So quite often a leadership team, that part of this clause really concerns them, but ultimately it's a bit more flexible than that in my opinion. Ensuring the result, communicating the importance of the effectiveness of the quality management system. Leadership team again can't devolve from that. They have to be communicating, saying that how we work daily, it's embedded in our routine and it's important to the business. Ensuring the management system achieves its intended outcomes. If you do Section 4 well, then you will be continually and routinely monitoring against that because it is aligned to your management system. It's a big feature of it now. Engaging, direct and supporting persons to contribute to the effectiveness of the quality management system. Okay, that can be devolved to a degree, but ultimately your management team that sits below the leadership should also be engaged to that effect. Promoting improvement. Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. I think you've got to look to your leadership team to be doing that. And then supporting other relevant management roles to demonstrate the leadership as it applies to their areas of responsibility. That's everyone's job, ensuring that we do that. So, in general, what will the certification body expect to see? And again, picking from my experience on this, it's a new clause. Much of it was already in Section 5, apart from the fact that you can't devolve. So there's now the requirement for top management to take full accountability for the effectiveness of the management system and demonstrate leadership and commitment. They have to ensure the policy objectives are compatible, they're real, they are reviewed, they comply with strategic direction. The pitfalls, okay, I cross some problems here if I'm being quite honest, and I think it's wise to share that with a group of people that perhaps haven't transitioned yet. So, first one would be the policy does not include a commitment to satisfy all applicable requirements. Many of the policies that I see while auditing around my supply chain are related and more customer centric. I actually got a non-conformance for this during this transition process because my policy, although well written and satisfied customer requirements, this additional requirement wasn't very visible within it. So I would read that section as standard and perhaps review that prior to your transition. The other pitfall in this area for me is that clear authorities haven't been defined in your business, where top management shall ensure that the responsibilities and authorities now for relevant roles are assigned. It was a bit of a strange one for me. Responsibilities were very clear. So what we did to address this is we actually added a section for authority. Thought that would be quite easy. Actually, when you start looking at a quality management's authority versus an operations director's authority, it can become complex. And you have to try and segregate duty. And that was the whole point of it being in a standard. So very interesting. It actually resolved a few issues. I wouldn't try and do it with every role profile. It doesn't need to be done in the role profile. There's other means, but that's how I've done it. I would pick the key role profiles in the business and then go more generic. Okay. In general, external auditors are now interviewing your leadership team during all surveillance and certification audits. So the leadership team now need to demonstrate commitment and leadership to the quality management system. Okay. Section 6, planning. So this is where the risk aspect came in, and it moved into Section 6, and it's refining the planning process. I think ultimately, if we're talking layman terms, what you've said at Section 4, with the context of your organisation, should always be reflected upon and reviewed and considered when you're looking at changing processes, changing procedures, changing business practices, changing strategic direction, because ultimately it could affect what you've said for internal and external issues that are key to the business, but more so it can affect your interested parties. So when taking changes, when it's change control management, consider all of that. Okay, the standard itself is asking for, when planning for quality management system, the organisation shall consider the issues referred to in 4.1 and 4.2. So it's actually pulling that out. Opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the quality management system can achieve its intended results. Again, Section 4 comes to mind. Enhance the desirable effects, prevent or reduce undesired effects, and achieve improvement. What will the certification body expect to see, and what's my experience? So having identified risks and opportunity, there's now a requirement to plan actions to address them and how to integrate them into the QMS and evaluate the effectiveness. I actually changed my preventive action procedure. I mapped out the risk tools that I used around the business. If you consider some of these now, we all don't agree on risk tools, what they are and whether they are. I'll have a pitch at it. PFMEA, new product introduction, deliverables, gated review processes, maintenance, calibration, 5S, all of them are risk tools. I had a look at all of them. I chose them as scope items. And all of the tools actually apply when you're looking at changing a process. It's the tools that you already have. So it doesn't change much, if I'm being honest. Quality objectives. Looking at that in Section 6, this is an existing requirement for quality objectives, but it's got the additional requirement for them to be established through a process approach. The hint here is look back to what you've done in Section 4, because if you get that right, you're going to get Section 6 right. And all objectives established, including those relating to processes, they've got to be measurable. We all know that. They've got to be relevant to conformity of products, and they've got to support the interested parties, services, and also the customer satisfaction. Okay, we'll move on. So Section 7, support. So requirements defined within Section 7 for my organisation so far have remained largely unchanged, although the requirements were within other sections. So it's really pulling your management system, the areas in the management system it sits in now, and try and rearrange the structure from my point of view. So a kind of overview, I've pulled out 6.1.6 to start with, organisational knowledge. That's fairly new. So that's a new requirement which calls for the organisation to determine the levels of knowledge needed to control its processes and to achieve conformity products and services. If you think training and competence was already in place, we now perhaps need to consider knowledge to be something in the same, and I think we're all largely there, but we should consider, are we actually looking at the knowledge from role to role does it align to our business? Does it align to our product? And should we be doing something about that? And the certification body will expect to see a demonstration of that, although I would suggest it doesn't always have to be documented. 7.4 is the other one, communication. It's an explicit change in the standard. My recommendation is map the process, plan on what you're going to communicate, when to communicate, align to the standard basically, who you're going to communicate to, and keep it aligned to your interested parties, because it's all of the guys, all these people that you're going to be communicating to. So I would suggest that you have a look at your current approach to communication, perhaps try and map it and plan it. And again, I actually had a conversation with a leadership team yesterday where I says, try not to make this too complex, because if you start failing, then you have another compliance issue. So it's all about the right information at the right time to the right people, in my opinion. 7.5, documented information. Okay, so a lot of people are saying we don't need to have procedures. I currently preside over 15,000 management systems in my supply chain. If I walk in there to do an audit, I'm going to expect to see documented information appropriate to that organisation. Okay, as a customer to them, I'm going to expect to see a doc control procedure, a non-conformity procedure, a corrective action procedure, a risk procedure, and so on. Nothing really has changed for me there, because you can't run a robust business without having documented procedures, especially if you've got changes in the organisation. You need to have your system documented. We still have to approve documents for adequacy. We still have to distribute them. We still have to revision control them, and so on. So all the clauses are still there. The only other change is that it's not separate from controller records. Now, controller records has now been pulled into the documented information clause. Okay. For Section 8, again, for me, there wasn't a lot of changes there, although we should be very careful and make sure that we already complied fully in this area, because previously you were in at your section with design and all your processes interlacing with each other. Changes for me were, there was an annex SL structure required. I developed a realisation map, and you'll notice that there's referral to some procedures on there. They were blank at one point. You know, that was the key procedures aligned to Section 4. What did I require to do to be able to measure, set objectives? And then really feeding into your realisation. They all affect your realisation, but the key change here is realisation is not always about customers now. So you've got interested parties as your output, and their satisfaction is your output as well. If we just move on in that, a key area, and again, I'm hearing IdeaGen. I do use IdeaGen products, and they work very well for me. What I've illustrated here is probably good information, is if you look around that realisation map, particularly in the continual improvement activity, I actually use the QPulse product for that. So I do endorse it, but it actually did a really good job for me as well over a long number of years. Helped me save costs. It helped me to manage my audits, my corrective actions, helped me to eliminate risks. So I thought it was important that, I suppose the message that I've got here is hard to do all of that joined up on SharePoint or on Excel or on other pieces of software. There's others out there, but ultimately I think your management system really starts to stack up and be aligned and interface with other areas of the business when you actually have a management execution system, and try and get it all under one roof from a compliance perspective. So Section 8, if we have a look at that, what will the certification body expect to see? So this is equivalent to the current clause 7.1. As I said, the intent in the standards it's largely unchanged, though there's a few small additions and clarifications, plus the new requirement to control any outsourced processes stated in clause 8.4. I've pulled that out in particular because the way I read the standard, we all perceive things differently. I now feel that I have to treat my suppliers' processes as an extension of my own process. I didn't find that much different in the 2008 standard, but it's now very explicit in that area. Points for note there: do we do PPAP? Do we approve our suppliers' processes? Do we approve the components before they get there? Do we have a control plan for that process? That's you approving and managing and understanding and demonstrating that you've reviewed their validation processes. That in itself is a strong step towards being able to control your externally provided products and services. Your supplier audit programme, your supplier onboarding programme, How do you approve suppliers? How do you segment them? Are they tier 1? Are they tier 4? So I would ask all those questions and reflect in your current system. Do you actually set the criteria for what a supplier is and what they should aspire to be for them to be a supplier to your business? Because ultimately, my feeling is that's what the standard's now asking you to do. Okay. Pitfalls. Section 8. The internal and external issues in Section 4 are not considered when creating and changing process. This is the area where it could hurt you most, so keep looking back. There's a red line through the backbone of your management system from Section 4 and 5 all the way through till we get to Section 10. So this is one of the key areas where you should absolutely look back there and understand if you're going to impact your interested parties. The other pitfalls, there's no statement that externally provided processes, products or services must conform to specified requirements. It's not so much a statement, think about the process. And that's a real pitfall. That's a step forward for some businesses as well. So now it's fairly clear in the standard, and your certification body should be already discussing that with you and making sure that you're ready from that perspective. Okay, Section 9. When we move into Section 9 and Section 10, for businesses that were already at a mature 9001-2008 system, they should really see no issues apart from the Annex SL structure change. So you can see 9.1.1 through to 9.2, there was no major changes. Okay, let's talk internal audit, because there's a lot of talk out in the businesses just now, the heaviest impacts in the internal audit. Think about Section 4. It should drive your audit programme. I would suggest the biggest changes, perhaps your Section 4 and your management review, when we come to that, could actually drive a dynamic internal audit approach. It could change. Your schedule could change. You could add to it. You could change priority. Now, from my experience, I've been doing it a long time anyway, but I would suggest if you're picking up non-conformity in internal audit, apply a risk tool. Okay, risk assess it. Understand the priority and the severity and how it'll impact your interested parties. That's what it's asking you to do. That's my perception of this area. 9.3, management review. I feel to properly manage what you've defined at Section 4.1 and 4.2, you have to routinely be monitoring against these sections. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Basically, if you're already having a quality meeting, having a technical meeting, really you're already looking at the requirements and the inputs. I would imagine you may have to make some sort of changes, but I would suggest that you look to your monthly cycle, your weekly cycles, and try and get as much out of them as possible. And again, relate that to Section 4.1 and 4.2, because that's where you're setting objectives. That's where you're measuring yourself against your objectives. Personally, I feel that an annual review in December, looking back at January, is really not going to satisfy what you're doing at 4.2. But that's my advice. That really, most businesses may well continue to do the annual cycle and still do their monthly reviews. So that's really how I've done it over the last 3 or 4 years now. Okay, SWOT and PESTLE tools, I applied them to my management review agenda areas in each of these functional meetings. So really ensuring that, again, I'm looking back to these external issues and I'm applying proper risk-based tools and taking the appropriate action. It's a great demonstration of compliance, but actually it changed my business. It changed other businesses where I applied this also. And there's more detailed requirements for inputs and outputs for management review. It's got to be a process approach. You don't need a procedure, but you should be able to demonstrate what inputs are coming in, which is the requirements of standard, your data inputs, your cultural inputs into the process, who attends, the leadership commitment to it, but what outputs are coming out. That's an important part here, and that they're being managed and actioned, and it's helping the business system to evolve. Okay, I think we'll move on from that to Section 10. Okay, Section 10, this falls into the same category. I didn't actually feel that a mature system for 2008 would be heavily impacted from this. So non-conformity and corrective action, these were previously separate clauses in 9001-2008. They've now been put together. My feeling is it's a good thing. Every non-conformity becomes a corrective action, in my opinion. And they're worded differently, but the intentions are largely the same. So for me, there was no real major change to my management system apart from a reshuffling of how I proceduralised it. And on continual improvement, it's similar to the existing clause in 8.5.1 in the old standard, but the sources of information used to drive improvement have changed. And if you read the standard, it's fairly explicit in that area. And it also requires the identification of any underperformance to be addressed. It's specifically asking for businesses to do that and refers to the use of tools and methodologies to assist in the process. And really a big feature of today's presentation has been these tools, methodology. We're talking about risk. Section 4 is all about risk, and I keep talking about section 4 and 5 because that builds the platform, the foundation for your management system. Okay, I think at that point I've spoken enough. I need a drink of water. I hope that was a benefit to people. I'm happy to take some questions. Please be kind to me. So I'll hand it back
I thought you
over
liked a challenge. You told me you like a challenge.
And I'm 3 minutes ahead of my time. So I'll hand it back over to Jane and the team, and if anyone's any questions, then please go ahead and do so.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate that. I know you've been talking for some time. It's unusual for me not to butt in and start asking you questions early doors there. So, no, we really appreciate it. And yeah, getting across the message to everyone, which is exactly what we wanted to do today. So hopefully that's benefited everyone that's been on the call and the webinar. Barnaby Kent, our COO, he talks about it should be part of your DNA. Tomorrow we want to be better about knowing your strengths and weaknesses across the organisation, and how you've perfectly demonstrated that today in a process of how to do that in a business. So, a few questions. First one, how does a company obtaining ISO for the first time go about demonstrating justification for exclusion of design requirements?
Well, that's a good question for 2015, because this reverts back to the 2008 and the predecessors. There was what's known as permissible exclusions, and Section 7 for design was one of those. To my knowledge, those permissible exclusions have now been completely removed, where you have to demonstrate those exclusions. Okay, I would check with the certification body, but my feeling is that in the absence of permissible exclusions having to be demonstrated, that it would be as simple as discussing it with the certification body and ensuring that during the certification cycle that it's a feature that's discussed, reviewed, and ensured that you aren't adopting design principles or adopting design processes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Another question, section 8.4.2, with regards to the type and extent of control applied to the externally provided processes, products and services, how did you ensure that the externally provided processes remained within the control of your QMS? Okay, so it's probably an area for a lot of businesses where they're manufacturing and buying in a lot of their product, and then doing the assembly work. So let's look at it in two facets. Who are your suppliers and how do you qualify them? Ask yourself that question. Go to your business management system, and does it define that? Do you approve your suppliers? Have you set a criteria? What process should be followed? So that's one element. That's you ensuring that you're adopting the right suppliers and they fit the criteria that you've predetermined. The second aspect to this for me is actually the product, and probably the most important for me, really when you're buying volumes of materials. And that is really, I looked at it from a PPAP point of view in a new product introduction. So early supplier engagement, documenting it within your new product introduction process and procedures, and ensuring that you are a feature of your supplier's new product introduction, the validation. Documenting that as per the requirements of your system, but then the PPAP aspect of that, pre-approving the components, getting the right documentation, making sure the FMEAs are done, looking at the process flow, looking at the process map, the control plans, approving that, being part of that. That is you actually approving a process similar to what you would approve one of your own. So from that perspective, that's how I done it. I wrote that into the management system, proceduralised it, and absolutely ensured that the system reflected exactly how we went about that process. Okay, so we have another few questions here. We're almost at the point of inspection and have worked tirelessly to get everything in place for ISO. This is a business on the webinar today. However, we really need to get top management to get on board with it. Have you any advice? Good question.
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the most challenging aspects of this. Your top management should be a feature of the daily business, okay? When you look at what I discussed in section 4, really you should be lining up some sessions with the management team. Try to sell the benefits first and foremost, but actually taking the management team, the leadership team through that process, helping them understand the tangible benefits for the business. So for instance, if we look at the financial performance and the measures against that, showing them what tools could be applied and how you would manage that workflow to be able to go and manage actions should you consider that you're not meeting the trends required. Usually I start with finance. Individual sessions with the leadership team. I did this yesterday. Actually sitting down across the table, not getting too heavy into the standard. Stick to section 4 and section 5. Don't tell them that they can't devolve themselves. Let them read it for themselves, but take them through the process. Ask them to engage with you to say, well, what's important for your functional area of the business and what's the strategic direction? And try and align that to the process that you've created for section 4.1 and 4.2. But it is challenging. And sometimes leadership teams just really don't want to become engaged, but that will come to the fore during your certification process. And sometimes that's the healing process of what I've just mentioned doesn't work.
Great. Okay, another question's come in. We're being asked, do you use a software for PPAP and NPI processes that you've adopted?
Yes, I'm using QPulse for that.
Yeah.
So I use the occurrence module, handing over the incident module in QPulse. I harness the data that I require, and due to the routing format within that, I can then target the appropriate areas of the business, which is usually a supplier quality team.
Okay.
Beyond that, I can also manage the deviation concession aspect of that as well through that system. So that's why I chose to do it there.
Sure. Okay. Just for a note for people that are on the webinar today, we one of the acquisitions for IdeaGen was with a company called IPI, and we have software for PPAP, FAI, and NPI as well. So that's another part of QPulse itself, and it communicates with QPulse through the non-conformances through the CAPA. So I'm also been asked another question. What does the acronym PESTLE stand for?
It's for political, economical, okay, sociological, technological, and environmental. Okay, and what I ask you, if you imagine a SWOT grid where you've got strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, PESTLE works the same. You create a 6-box grid, and you associate those aspects to those grids. Okay, if you go online, the Google button will work very well here. It's sometimes referred to as steeples, and there's various different guises of the tool. Tough question, had to think. I didn't have my risk management head on there, but I managed to pull it off, I think.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Another question, a short one, but quite a simple. What impact did introducing the new standard have on the approach to your audit programme?
Well, as I said earlier, because of what we were doing at section 4, and day-to-day people didn't know we were doing that at section 4, they were just really engaged with their objectives. The output from the management review process was sometimes we had to reprioritise. So ultimately the risk-based approach was being taken in the management review and the review processes, and the approach I took was that we could have a dynamic schedule. Right. I set a baseline schedule, ensure that I capture the full scope of the requirements of ISO. But sometimes when your risks around the business are telling you to look somewhere in more depth, then basically you should change your schedule. So that was my approach, to go more dynamic.
Okay, so another question, and this will be from an existing customer, I'm assuming here. What QPulse module is used for managing aspects for 14,000?
For aspects, it's got to be occurrences, okay, but I could answer that in 3 different ways, if I'm being honest, because I've done it in various guises. I would use occurrences. I would grid it up as occurrences as well, and take it into incidents. So ultimately, when you look at aspects within the business, you've got to have a mitigation against that aspect. And to mitigate something, you've got to assign a task, a responsibility, and a target time scale. And then you have to revisit it, review it, and verify the effectiveness. So for that reason, the IMS aspect, actually ties in best for me.
Yeah, because you're pretty much designing the form yourself.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The whole thing will be uniform throughout for any of the standards, really.
Just be careful with that though, because I also isolated aspect areas within my business and set them as audits. Okay, so if you look at your aspects and impacts register, okay, then you will have aspect topics with sub-aspects below it. They can become dedicated audits. Then you are really able to demonstrate a risk-based approach to the aspect of your audit programme.
Okay. So I'm just having a quick look at any other questions that we have here. Oh, just asking for. Hang on, let me just check. What are some of the key actions you took to 6.1 to address risk and opportunity?
I think we've covered it.
Yeah,
if
we've
I'm being quite honest,
that.
when you think about the dynamic approach to auditing, when you think about the tasks and actions, the monitoring, the routine monitoring for Section 4. There's various guys, as we mentioned, risk tools, new product introduction processes, that what we gain from those processes being strong. So really it's about looking around the business, your risk tools, and really include them all, 5S, maintenance, internal audit, is that a risk tool? Absolutely. So have a think about that. It becomes a bit simpler when you do it in a methodical way or a pragmatic way.
Okay, there is a question here from Richard. How do you merge ISO 9001 2015 to ISO 17025 2017?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is it?
So I actually have no experience with that standard. What I would say, if it's on an Annex SL structure, then you're going to have around 60% commonality, okay? And it's the operational section of that standard that would differ. So your doc control will be the same, your records will be the same, I'll call it documented information, apologies, but that remains the same. Internal audit, non-conformity, management review, objectives, so 4.1, interested parties. I don't know the standard, I haven't worked with that, but if it's on Annex SL, then it'd be fairly easy to merge. If it's on Annex SL, would be the answer.
Thanks, Richard. That was a great question. We appreciate it. So we're coming to our time to close. So any questions that anyone has that you want to catch up with us again after we close down today, it's iso@ideagem.com. So email us at iso@ideagem.com, and I'm sure we can get Martin to answer any more questions that you have. So it's been an absolute privilege today, Martin. Thank you so much for having your expertise on the call today. It's been much appreciated. We've been hearing so much about companies, existing customers, and companies that we've been in to speak to recently are just maybe going through their auditing this month, next month. Some of them are targeted for around about February time. So hopefully that's helped them and supported them there. They do have until September, but if they haven't done anything so far, they should be getting a move on. But I'm sure you all have it in hand, and using Martin's expertise there, that can help support you. So I'd like to say again, thank you all for your time. And thank you again, Martin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and take care. Bye-bye.